Welcome to the Quirk Lab, where weird human habits meet hardcore science. Your eyes open. The bedroom looks familiar. You can see the door, hear the fan, maybe even feel the blanket on your chest. Then you try to lift one hand. Nothing. You try to call out. Nothing again. And for some people, that is when a shape appears in the corner, or the unmistakable feeling that someone else is in the room. But the shadow is not the first thing that happened. It may be the final answer your frightened brain invents for a much stranger problem. You are awake enough to notice the room while part of your nervous system is still dreaming. That experience is called sleep paralysis, a brief inability to make voluntary movements as you fall asleep or wake up. Episodes usually last seconds to minutes. They can be terrifying, but a single isolated episode can happen in an otherwise healthy person. People often summarize it by saying, "Your brain woke up before your body." That is close enough for a thumbnail. Biologically, though, your brain and body do not have one master on switch. Sleep and wakefulness are packages of features, and those features can sometimes change at different times. Scientists call that state dissociation. Awareness of the room may return while muscle inhibition associated with rapid eye movement sleep, REM sleep, briefly remains. Dreamlike perceptions may overlap with real sensory information. Fear may then turn uncertainty into a threat. So this is not simply being awake inside a sleeping body. It is a temporary hybrid assembled from pieces of REM and pieces of wakefulness. And that distinction explains almost everything that follows. During REM sleep, the cortex can be highly active and dreams can be vivid. At the same time, circuits in the brainstem suppress most skeletal muscle activity. This REM atonia is a normal motor lock. It helps keep a dream of running from becoming an actual sprint across the bedroom. The lock is not absolute. Your eyes still move. Your diaphragm keeps breathing. Small twitches can break through, but the large voluntary muscles of the limbs and trunk are strongly inhibited. In sleep paralysis, that REM-related inhibition persists into a moment of conscious awareness. The best direct evidence comes from rare laboratory recordings. In one small 1992 experiment, researchers repeatedly interrupted the sleep of 16 volunteers. They triggered 6 episodes of isolated sleep paralysis. During those episodes, the recordings showed abundant waking-like alpha brain activity together with continuing muscle atonia. That experiment was tiny and highly artificial, so it cannot tell us how common sleep paralysis is in ordinary life. But it captured the central contradiction on instruments: signs of waking awareness and REM-like motor inhibition at the same time. Recent clinical neurophysiology reviews reach the same cautious conclusion. The available recordings are limited, but sleep paralysis behaves like an intermediate REM wake state, not like the body mysteriously shutting down after the mind is fully awake. Now stack the experience in 4 layers. Layer 1, awareness. You recognize the room, your position, or the fact that something is wrong. Layer 2, the motor lock. You send a command to move, but the expected movement and feedback do not arrive. Layer 3, perception is still unstable. REM dream imagery may continue, while the real bedroom supplies dim, incomplete, and ambiguous sensory input. Layer 4, threat interpretation. A brain that cannot move, cannot explain why, and cannot verify what is nearby, has excellent reasons to become hypervigilant. This 4-layer ladder is a useful synthesis, not a proven frame-by-frame sequence in every episode. Sleep paralysis recordings are rare, and the precise neural origin of its hallucinations remains partly theoretical. But here is the payoff. the shadow in the room is not the first event. First comes a body that does not respond. Then comes a conflict between intention, sensation, and expectation. A threatening presence is one possible story the brain builds to make that conflict intelligible. And it is not the only story. Researchers often organize sleep paralysis experiences into three broad families. The first is the intruder experience. A person may hear footsteps, see a figure, or simply feel that an unseen being is nearby. That last version matters. A felt presence does not require a detailed visual hallucination. The certainty that someone is there can arrive before the brain supplies a face. One proposal is that paralysis disrupts the brain's prediction of its own body and actions. When the expected sensory consequences of movement are missing, the brain may misattribute part of that unresolved body model to another agent. Threat vigilance could then give the agent hostile intent. This is plausible, but it remains a model, not a scan that has caught a demon-shaped circuit turning on. The second family is traditionally called the incubus experience. Pressure on the chest, choking, or a sense that something is sitting on the body. The sensation is real as an experience, but it does not by itself show that breathing has stopped. The diaphragm is normally spared by REM atonia. Changes in respiratory muscle activity, body position, the effort to take deliberate control of breathing, and panic may all contribute to a terrifying sense of resistance. The third family is vestibular motor. Instead of an intruder, someone may feel as if they are floating, falling, spinning, flying, or leaving the body. Here again, the brain expects motion-related feedback but receives an unusual combination of motor inhibition, dream sensation, and real body position. These categories can overlap, and they are not a checklist. Some episodes contain paralysis and fear, but no visual or auditory hallucination at all. That last point corrects one of the internet's favorite myths. Sleep paralysis does not require a demon. In one recent meta-analysis, most of the pooled episodes with hallucination data had neither visual nor auditory hallucinations. Other individual studies have reported much higher hallucination rates. Different questions, populations, and definitions produce very different answers. So, I saw nothing does not rule sleep paralysis out. And I saw something does not make the something external. The basic conflict may be biological, but the interpretation is not created in a cultural vacuum. Across history, people have described night hags, spirits, witches, ghosts, demons, and alien visitors. The recurring structure is striking: immobility, pressure, presence, fear. The costume varies. A small interview study in Italy illustrates the point. Some participants described figures that resembled the local Panda Fehk tradition, a witch-like or cat-like creature blamed for nighttime attacks. Because the study was small and retrospective, it cannot prove that culture caused any particular hallucination. It does show that expectations can provide ready-made images and explanations for an ambiguous event. The nervous system may supply the paralysis and the sense of threat. Memory, belief, movies, folklore, and the shape of a coat in a dark room can help cast the visitor. That is why explaining sleep paralysis is more powerful than merely calling it harmless. A biological explanation gives the brain a less catastrophic script to retrieve next time. You may have seen wildly different prevalence numbers, and there is a reason. An older systematic review of 35 studies estimated that about 7.6% of general population participants had experienced sleep paralysis at least once. It reported much higher estimates in student and psychiatric samples. A broader 2024 meta-analysis combined 76 observational studies from 25 countries and produced a pooled estimate of 30%. But the studies were extremely heterogeneous. They sampled different groups, used different questionnaires, and did not always define the event the same way. Those numbers are not clean competitors. They are evidence that the estimate depends heavily on whom you ask and how you ask. The honest conclusion is not one universal percentage. It is that sleep paralysis is common enough to be a recognizable human experience and variable enough to resist a single clickbait number. What makes an episode more likely? One of the clearest recurring themes is disrupted or irregular sleep. A systematic review of 42 studies found associations with sleep problems and disruption, along with stress, trauma, anxiety symptoms, substance use, and several other factors. Most of that evidence is observational. It identifies patterns, not one proven cause. Sleeping on your back is also associated with more episodes in some surveys. That makes side sleeping a reasonable low-risk adjustment if a person notices a clear pattern, but it is not a universal cure. A back sleeping episode does not prove that posture caused it. The same caution applies to sleep apnea. Breathing disorders and sleep fragmentation may coexist with sleep paralysis, and individual case reports suggest a connection in some people. But sleep paralysis alone does not diagnose apnea, oxygen loss, or any other breathing disorder. Narcolepsy is another frequently misunderstood link. Sleep paralysis can be part of narcolepsy, but an isolated episode does not automatically mean narcolepsy. The larger diagnostic picture centers on persistent excessive daytime sleepiness and may include cataplexy, sudden muscle weakness triggered by emotion, plus sleep-related hallucinations and disrupted nighttime sleep. Diagnosis requires a clinician, often with specialized sleep testing. During an episode, the most evidence-aligned first step is cognitive. Recognize the state. This is sleep paralysis. It is temporary. My automatic breathing is continuing. Some clinical approaches also teach focused relaxation or attention to a small movement, but direct treatment evidence remains limited, and no technique is guaranteed to end an episode instantly. For prevention, boring advice wins. Get enough sleep, keep sleep and wake times regular, and address insomnia or severe sleep disruption. If episodes are frequent, make you afraid to sleep, or leave you persistently exhausted, talk with a medical professional. The same applies if you have overwhelming daytime sleepiness, emotion-triggered weakness, loud snoring or gasping, or other symptoms that suggest a broader sleep problem. So, did your brain wake up before your body? In a sense, yes. Awareness returned before one feature of REM sleep, the motor lock, had fully released. But the deeper answer is stranger. For a few moments, waking perception, REM atonia, dreamlike imagery, and threat detections can occupy the same room. The body does not fail. The visitor does not arrive first. The brain encounters a mismatch, searches for a cause, and sometimes gives the darkness a face. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed exploring the science behind everyday quirks, subscribe to the Quirk Lab, and I'll see you in the next one.